signed up for it. I was able to log in. Yeah. Check out the booth, ask questions and stuff. Like, definitely walking more. I use ASP for it. A lot of people use have discussions like I see people use there's so much data. You're using you have an app that don't like a lot of data from they support better. I did pretty well on it. The other group did really well. Some people didn't. Oh yeah, I did expression because I basically no question. And I don't know. Nobody in my group had a program. Oh yeah, it's pretty cool. Honestly, like that part is kind of hard to pick up at the start, but by the end, I feel like getting to it. It makes things so much easier. Oh yeah. And it just goes so easy. I don't even realize how crazy concepts you get. Like, my co-op I'm doing right now, originally I said to open this provider for I'm basically creating for so I had to make like a provider that can it's like regular database, just like objects and relational mapping. So basically save all the tables I need in all my structures in one save. Okay.
All right, welcome to week number 5. I have so many announcements here. Let me get my paper. Announcement number 1, I'm still marking lab 4. Rich Freeman actually gave me some advice to lessen my marking, and I think I'll do that. So I think from now on for the in-class labs or in-class exercise in the labs, instead of me like doing the nuance of 1.8, 1.5 out of 2, it'll just be a straight 2, 1, 0. So 2 complete, 1 incomplete, 0, nothing, right? So it's just faster for me to grade. Announcement number 2, if you check your Blackboard, I've put under assignments a couple of new things. And this is totally optional, but it's designed to help boost your grade if you need to, or just fun, more knowledge, that kind of thing. So the first one, I have this grade booster number 1. It's basically watch this YouTube video of some guy coding this, do it, copy it, and so it works. And then the only change I request is that change the rest endpoint to this one so that the output looks like this. Okay, so it's just a few minor tweaks there. So you can get an extra 2%. So this is open to anyone wishing to boost their mark by 2%. Think of this as your makeup lab. So if you didn't hand in lab 2 or whatever, think of this as your makeup lab. Question, yeah. What was that? Yeah, I'll think about that. I'll think about that. Grade booster number 2 is worth 5%, an extra 5%. Actually, no. Well, yes and no. So this month is October. It's known as Hacktoberfest. And if you want to ensure that the remaining 5 quizzes after the reading week, that you get perfect on those quizzes, then do this. So even if you get 0 on any of those quizzes, you'll still get the perfect mark for all those quizzes. Okay? And so this is totally optional. Hacktoberfest is basically you're contributing to open source code. And I provided a link here on here's the link, a step-by-step guide to making your first GitHub. So just follow that so you know how to pull requests and all that. So once you've done that, just submit it here, and I'll give you the perfect 5%. So you don't have to write quizzes ever again after the reading week. Or if you do, it doesn't matter. No, that's not what I was thinking. But I like Matt's idea about more grade boosters. I think I'll do more like the first one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. This is just a word. So when as I marked lab 3, I got like tons of code that looked exactly the same. So just in case you don't know, you can't cheat. And I'm pretty good at seeing what's like. If you try to change a variable name, it's not going to work on me. And I've actually talked to Scott McCrindle about this issue, and he told me, you know what? Just send them to me. Okay, so I'll just email Scott, whoever I catch cheating, and he'll deal with you. And I'll send him all your code too. And the reason I changed up this course is to prevent cheating in the first place, because I've noticed in other courses that I've taught, students will just copy what I do and submit that in, and that doesn't tell me you've learned anything. And that's why I've designed the in-class exercise to emulate the labs, so that I want to see if you can apply the knowledge given to something else. That tells me you've learned something, right? At this point, if you give me something and it's not published on a website because you give me the excuse Azure isn't working, I'll accept it for now, but post reading week, I won't. Okay, at this point, you need to know how to publish on a website. The one thing I also did that you may have noticed is in the full grade center, if you check your marks, I remember telling you last week that the weighted total is your accurate mark now, but that was, I found out, realized that was false, because what it was doing, it was like, let's say you got perfect on a quiz, which was 5 out of 5. It was actually adding the 5 instead of the 1% that was needed to your total. So all of you were getting much more higher percentage for a grade than you ought to. So I had to change the quiz to be more accurate. So now under weighted total, that is now an accurate grade, okay? Okay, so any questions or comments before we move on to today? So what I've designed today is, I've decided to reverse what I usually do for in-class stuff. So my pattern is usually to teach you theory at the beginning, then do the in-class exercise followed by assigning of the lab near the end. I'm going to reverse that today. So I'm going to do the in-class exercise and assign the lab early so that I'm not rushed near the end if I run out of time. That way you have everything you need to know for the assignment. Okay. So today's class, we're going to talk about forms, how to get the values from the forms. We're going to talk a little bit about something new in ESX called destructuring, something new as well called default parameters. And then we're going to learn about that third big array method called reduce. So you had map, you had filter. Now we're going to talk about reduce. And finally, key press detection, which is an optional bonus thing for the assignment. Okay. So we're going to do a lot of interactive code here. So if you can get my slides up and ready so that you can fork my code pens. So right-click my code pen here and fork it so that you have your own copy. So here we're going to take our card game again, or card code. And last time we talked about how you can set local storage so that you can set some data, some objects into the application tab as viewable in Chrome browser. We're going to briefly talk about how to get that and how to check for that. Okay, because the assignment will ask you, use local storage to get your JSON data if it's already there. So upon refresh, it'll still have the same view. Okay, so how to do that? So here, if local storage was used with the key of cards, then let's use that. So here I'm saying, let's check if I've already stored it, and we're going to use the key of cards to check to see if that's the case. So what we could do is this. So this is the line of code we had before, let hand equals an empty array. What we could do is something like this. We could check for it. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. I always forget. Is one more Zoom? Yeah, okay. So you might be thinking, okay, I can put an if statement, like if, and you could kind of check for it, but there's a shorthand. We can use the or statement. What you could do is you can say, I'm going to put this in brackets for now. Local storage get item cards. So what this will return to me, what this will return is a string if it is there. However, as you probably remember from last class, I can't work with strings. I can only work with objects. That's why you have to say json.parse here. Okay. Now, so this, there's only two possibilities of this line. It'll give me either nothing, undefined, I forget exactly, which will evaluate as a false value, or it'll give me some kind of true value. So if I want my hand to be an array of that, I can say this using the or. I can say or an empty array. That's a shorthand. So this effectively says, if this is true, then use it. If this is false, then use this. Right? It's sort of like an if-else. Just a reminder for those. Let me see if I can find, yeah, something like that. Truth tables. Yes, truth tables. Who remembers truth tables? Really? No? Oh, man. Okay. So remember in our code last week, where we were using filter, and in our filter we said, some kind of array dot filter, and then we passed in some kind of, I forget what it was. We'll just say X for now. And then we had some kind of test, some kind of test here, test 1 and test 2. Do you remember that? I think even Umar asked me about that one, that particular line of code. So last week we had this kind of code. So what this is referring to is this truth table, right? So if this first test is true, because we're using an and, then it has to evaluate this to be true as well. And if both things are true, then the whole thing is true. And then it'll pass our filter. And so here's the truth table for and. This symbol here that looks like an upside down V is symbolic logic for and. So if your first part is true and your second part is true, then the whole thing is true. And that's what we had here, right? If your first part is true and your second part is false, then the whole thing's false. First thing is false, second thing is true, the whole thing's false. It's false and false, it's false. Okay? So that's why this is kind of like the short. Now let me go back to the or. So here's the truth table for or. So notice it's only true if either one is true or both are true. So in our code, we said here, local storage or empty array. And we're going to assign that to hand. What's happening here under the hood? Let me paste that to here. It's really tiny, I think. So what's happening here is that you were using this or, this or separates the first part and the second part. So here's the first part. So if we previously stored something, then the answer is true. And we can see here in our truth table for or, if the first part is true, either this one or this one, then the whole thing is true. Which means that since this is true, then our hand will be assigned whatever this is. However, if this is false, meaning we didn't previously store it, that means it's going to be one of these two options. But notice this one in particular here, this third line. This is kind of like a shorthand to tell the computer, okay, if this is false, then just run this, whatever that is, no matter what the value is, just run it, and output that value. So this is telling the computer, okay, if this is undefined and we haven't previously done it, then just use this value instead and assign it to hand. That's why you have truth tables, and that's why we use the and and the or. Okay. Hopefully, does that kind of make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me just briefly check if we have anything. Actually, no. We'll just keep on going. So that's great. We're checking at the beginning. We're checking to see if we've previously stored it, and we'll store it to hand if we do. The next thing, if you scroll down to line 23, let's actually set the local storage to our new hand. So what's happening here is we're fetching a new card, and we're pushing that new card to our array of hand, which means our hand array has changed, which means I want to quickly store that change into local storage. So here, what we could say for let's set local storage to our new hand, we could say something like this, and we've done this last week, and you've done this for your labs. Set item cards. We'll use the same key, and we're going to pass in some kind of hand. But what's the problem with this? As a reminder from last week, what's the problem with this? What am I going to get if I check the application tab? Yeah, Joel. A long string. I thought last week I said it would be like an object. It'll say object object, and then in order to make it a string, which is what we want to say JSON.stringify hand. Oops, I thought that was it. Yes, does that remind you? Yeah. So hand is an array, but keep in mind if you're using local storage to set an array, you can't. You need a string, and that's why we say JSON.stringify. Okay. And then let's actually display the hand. So I think at here, this one. Yeah. And then finally, at the bottom in line 82. The problem right now is, let's pretend that I did store something, so now it fetched it and it's using it. The initial view is not going to show it. It's going to be just like this green screen. I need to show it. So I'm just going to call render here, and I'm going to pass in my hand. And that hand should already have the what I've previously stored. Okay, so this is an example of what I did last night. Let me clear this to prove a point. So application tab, I'm in my local storage, I'm in here. Here you can see the key cards, which I defined, as well as the value. I'm just going to delete that, gone. So now, if I refresh this page, actually, let me save it first. Save. Now, if I refresh the page, I should see nothing, rendering nothing. Okay, let's deal a card. Deal. Good. So each time it dealt, it should have saved it to local storage. Let's test that. Let's go into our right, click inspect. Let's go into our application tab. Let's see if there it is. Cards. It's stored 7 of diamonds, etc. Is that what we have? Yeah, 7 of diamonds, etc. Okay, so if I refresh, it should look in my local storage and use that and render it. Refresh, and not the green screen. There. That's how you do your assignment. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna pause for a second. Let me just see what I had planned for next week, and I think I might deviate from that. Actually, I need my syllabus for a second. Let me see my syllabus. What did I have planned for next week? I was going to talk about promises, generators, event bubbling, for of loops, progressive enhancement, mark down this. Okay. Let's take a quick survey. I was just now playing with the idea that next week's class can be a work period, meaning you can show me your work, I can try to debug it, other classmates can try to debug your work. It's just like a free work period for assignment 1. Show of hands, who would like that? Okay. Show of hands, who would like me to actually teach something? Okay. Maybe I'll do just a little bit of teaching just to please Josh there. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's what I'll do. And it gives you like an easy, because I know that's your one of your harder weeks because all your classes are assigning stuff, right? So we'll make next week like a brief teaching week for me, and most of the class will be a work period. So you don't have to come to class next week, but if you do, expect to get help from either your classmates or myself. Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. So we'll do that. It's easier for me because I don't have to prep. Okay. All right. So any questions on that? That's how to get the stuff. All right, next topic. So getting form values. Your assignment will require you to click the compose button, which will reveal a form where you can type in your email, and when you click on send, it'll basically put a new email in your inbox. How do you do that? Okay, so let's do this. Next slide, right-click CodePen, fork it so you have a local copy. Notes. Okay, so here I have a default form with a submit button. So here's my to-do. In line 3, I say to-do, get the values upon form submission. How to do that? So what we're going to do now is we're going to get not the button for submit. We're going to actually get the form because we want to listen to a submit event, not a click event. And just to prove my point, this morning, I forgot about that. And this is what I did this morning. So don't do this. This is a mistake. All of this is a mistake. So if I said submit button equals, document.query selector, and what did I call it? I think it was a button. Right. So let's get that. And what am I going to do? I'm going to say submit button add event listener, click, and then the old style function for now. And I'll just console log click just to make sure it works. Submit. Okay, it works. Now, let me try to say submit here. But it doesn't work. So here's the rule. If you want to use or if you want to listen for a submit event, you have to document query selector the entire form. Okay, so here in my HTML, I think I just said form. Okay, so I'll just target that instead. So this one you can copy now. So query selector form. And then I'll rename my my variable. Instead of submit button, I'll call it form. Okay. Then the next thing I'll do is add a event listener. The form add event listener, and this time we're using the submit event. So we're listening for a submit. We're not listening for a click. Okay. Function. I'm going to put in the parameters. I'm going to put the E for the event because we want to prevent default. The reason we want to prevent default is because we don't actually want the form getting something from the internet. Prevent default will prevent that from happening. Let's see if that works. If I click on submit now, there, it worked. You can see this. Okay. Let's see what happens if I just say console log this. Again, this assumes that you're using the old style function, unless you purposely want to use the error function, which refers back to my other lecture about that this equals that or self equals this or that, which is a rarity. So ignore that. So in general, if you're using this, use the old style function. Let's see what happens. So I click on submit, boom, whoa, I get the whole entire form. So this represents the whole entire form. Cool. How do I get the values of the stuff in here? So that if I type in an email, if I type in some text here and some text, I want the submit button to console log those values of whatever I did. What you could do is console log this dot. Now, you have to look at the names of the input fields. So here is the input field for the email. So notice here I have a name of email address. I can actually access that. So if I say this dot email address, I'll actually forget the dot. I'll just say this dot email address. Let's see what I get. Let me put in some fake email and click submit. Submit. I have the whole entire input element. How do I get whatever was typed? What do you think? Yeah, dot value. So if I say this dot email address dot value, and let's put in some other email address, click submit. There, I now have the value. Okay, cool. Not too hard, right? So I could similarly do the same thing for the other ones. I could say console log this dot, what's the name of the next field? I think I named it topic. I'll just do the same thing. So this dot topic dot value. And I'll just do the same thing for the third field. What did I name it? I said message. I'll console that as well. Just to see what we're working with. So let's clear this out. Let's try it again. So test, 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 submit. Look, I have 3 values being consoled, and they're all the values that I typed. Pretty simple. Okay. So what we could do is we could create a new object out of that. So instead of console logging that, let's make a new object, because again, your assignment is when you click on compose, you type in some email here, and then when you hit submit, it's gonna get a new email in your inbox. So how are you gonna do that? Well, first you need to create an object out of these values, and once you've created an object out of these values, then you can push that object into your emails array, and voila, you now have a new inbox. We can say something like this. We could say const new email equals object. Then we just need to define some key and values. So we have a to, we have a subject line or topic, whatever, and then we have a body or a message. What goes into the to? Yeah, so I'm just going to copy or cut this console log. This dot email address dot value. I'm just going to cut that out and paste it after the to. Right. Same thing for the other ones. So I've removed my console logs now. I just have this. So I'm going to console log this new object. I'm going to say console log new email. See what I get. Okay, so here we go. We're going to type in some new stuff here. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see, submit. Aha, I have a new object with new key and values. So now that I have a new object, in my assignment, I could say something like this. Let's pretend in my assignment I had let emails, right, at the beginning. And I could say now emails dot push new email if I wanted to insert that email at the end of the array. Or if you want to emulate what a real email client usually does, is it'll insert the new email not at the end of the array, but at the beginning of or the top of the list. So instead of push, what method can I use? So emails.push can be replaced with what? Emails.what? Yeah, unshift. So unshift is the other array method that inserts the new element at the beginning of the array instead of the end. So this is what you want to use most likely for your assignment if you choose to design it that way, where the new email will appear at the top, and then you can render that. Right? And just to prove a point, you know what? Let's just prove a point. Let's create a let emails at the top right now. And you know what? I'm going to define it as an empty array because I need to push or unshift on an array. I can't just say let emails semicolon. Let's try this out. Let's save this out and clear the console and try it out. So test, test, test. And oh, I need to console log. Actually, you know what? I could just do that. So submit. Okay, I submitted it. Let me console log the emails array. So in the console, I could just say emails. And there it is. You can see one object. Okay, let's create another one. Let's try a different email and whatever. Submit. Boom. So that should have. Oh. So now that should have unshifted my array and inserted this new email at the beginning. Let's check it out. So if I go in my console, let's clear that out and say console log emails. Aha, I now have 2 emails, right? And the first one is the newest email that I just made. Does that make sense for the assignment? Cool. Oh, I said let emails equals empty array. And I only do that because later on I say I actually use an array method called unshift. So that unshift won't work if I had just said let email semicolon. What I'm going to show you now is a tip that I learned by accident through a student last year who did something that I kind of piqued my curiosity, as well as a tweet that I saw later on. So let me show you the tweet first. Let me Google Twitter. Yeah, this one. So I saw this tweet back in, when was this? May of last year. Let me magnify it. So you may not actually need the whole document.querySelector method when it comes to forms. So here you have a form, and you could use something called document.forms, dot whatever the name of the form is, dot whatever the name of the input field is, dot whatever value you want. So here in the sample, he says, just console log document.forms.norm. What's norm? Norm is the name of the form. So when he logs that out, he gets the whole form, from form name, from the top to the bottom of that form. If he now console log document.forms.norm.first, what's first referring to? It's referring to this first input field. So when he console logs that, he gets that DOM element, that first input field. So then now if he puts a dot value at the end of that, he gets whatever was typed in that value. So you may not need a document.querySelector at all when it comes to forms. And apparently this style is pretty old. This was back in when internet was invented, so I guess people forgot about it. So you may not need querySelector at all when it comes to forms. This is linked in my weekly learning, week 5. I put the tweet right here under additional sources right there. Yeah. Yeah, whenever I put stuff in the additional resources, take your time to check it out, especially the Twitter ones. They're all gold nuggets I've found over the years. Okay. So that is that. So I say here, now try to use the same thing using the document.forms method. Okay, so what I could do is instead of query selecting form, which I'm going to delete right now, so I don't have a form anymore. What I could say document.forms.new email, which is the name of my form, add event listener. That should be the same thing. Let's test it out. Test, submit, and there it is. Cool. Cool. That's just a quick tip. What else did I mention? I think that was it for that slide. I think. Yeah. So that's how you do the assignment where you have to compose something, you know, make a form appear and submit that. Cool. All right. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do in-class exercise 5. Hold on. What time is it? Good. So we're going to do in-class exercise 5. Now, before we do that, I'm going to play for you this. Actually, before I play that, let me show you this article. So here's an example of something you might typically see. You're reading some article. This happens to be from webdesigner.depot.com. And their articles, you could tweet whatever articles you want. So here's their article, blah, blah, blah. And then they have a tweet button here. And if you click on the tweet button, look at the behavior, click. Then you have a form like this where you have some pre-populated text inside their form already. And then you just click on tweet, and you get your tweet has been posted. Okay? So let me show you what to do here for in-class exercise 5. This is what I want you to do for in-class exercise 5. Let me magnify it. So I'm going to give you this in CodePen, you have to click on tweet, which will do a form, open up a form, will have pre-populated text in it already. Notice it's getting the title from the actual article. Click on share. It console logs tweeting article by Robin. So that's the author. You're getting that author information, as well as the page says your tweet has been posted. That's your goal for in-class exercise 5. Again, because it's in-class exercise, we're going to do this together. And this, why am I showing this? Again, to reinforce what we just learned with forms and to provide you with a hint for the midterm. So here we go. So open up, click on this in-class exercise 5. And I've given you this empty CodePen for now. Let me get my notes. Okay. Whoa, that's huge. It's going to be a lot of coding today. All right. Define the article object. So what I did was I went to tachyons.io and I went to components. And this first one here that you see, article lists, I just took this one here as it's coming up there. I just isolated this one right here. Okay. So what I want you to do now, okay, this is going to be a review of everything we've kind of done. And again, for the midterm, I'm going to ask you to start from scratch anyway. So this is a good practice. Is I want you right now to, in your code, define the article object. So const article equals some empty object. And right now, I want you to fill that in with the following: the title, body, author, date, picture, and the alt tag. So go ahead and copy and paste what you deem necessary to make that happen. So obviously the title of this is this one, Tech Giant. So I'm going to copy that, Control C, go into my JavaScript code, string, paste. First one is done. Do the same thing for the rest. The alt is the alt attribute inside the image element. All right, so now that you've done that, let's go ahead and fill in the information dynamically using JavaScript. So this is, again, basics review. So we're going to fill in the heading. So I want this title to show up in the h1 tag. So let's look at the h1 tag. So I want to target that. I think that's the only h1 tag, so I could just target that. So const h1 equals document dot query selector h1. You know, stuff you already know. That's okay. h1 dot text content equals. So what are you going to put here? I'm going to put article dot title. And by doing that, there. So now that shows up. Wonderful. Do the same thing for the rest. I'll give you a few minutes for the rest. Oh, sorry. So do the same thing for the paragraph element in line 22. 26, line 26, the author, do the same thing. Line 30, do the same thing for the date. And line 34, get the same thing for the pick. So do that. In the end, you should see something like this. How you choose to grab those elements is up to you, but these are the ones I did. And I also, for the pick, take note, I also set the alt attribute as well using the set attribute method. So if I right click my image, I should see the alt in the attributes. There it is, alt photo of a dimly lit room. So that's good. Always important to think about accessibility. Okay, so should I wait or we're good to go? Yeah. Okay, I'll wait. Are we good to go or should I wait some more? Good to go? Yeah, okay, awesome. All right, so again, the functionality is when you click the tweet button, it kind of gives you a new page almost, like the whole thing, this whole thing disappears. It just has that tweet form box that you can tweet something. So I say here in line 40, when tweet button is clicked, display a form with the share button, and inside that form, display the words tweet followed by the article title. Okay, so how do we do that? First, we need access. We need to make the button functional, so we need to grab it and add an event listener to it. So let's do that. So const, I'll say tweet button equals document.query selector, and I happen to have an ID of tweet on that button. I'm going to target that. Next, we're going to add in a click event so we can do something. So tweet button dot add event listener click. For now, I'll just use the arrow function because I won't be using this. We may need it later. We'll see. So let's just console log, make sure that it's clicked. So I'll just say console log clicked. Out console click. There, it works. Great. So now that we've got that button working, we got the infrastructure in place. What we want to do, what is my, hold on here. What did I say? Oh, let me look at my HTML structure for a second. Oh, that's why. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clear the screen and just put something else on it. So notice here that in the HTML section at the very top, I put a section ID of news. So my strategy is whatever is inside news now, I'm going to inner HTML something totally different. That'd be the form. So that's why I'm going to target the news next. So upon clicking the button, let's target that section element. So I'm going to say const news equals document.query selector. Because we're using an ID, I'm using the hashtag. Inside that, I'm going to say news.innerHTML equals backticks. I'm going to press enter to make it multi-line. So form, where am I going to get the form from? I got it from, where did I get that form from? From Tach, is it Tachyons that I'm using? No, I think I'm using Bulma. So if you Google Bulma, on the right-hand side, you'll see a form. So Bulma is just like Bootstrap. It's just another CSS framework. It's pretty hot nowadays. Check it out. So click on form, then click on general. Then you'll see all of this. Oh, you know what? Maybe, yeah, you know what? I'll save you some time. Let me go in Blackboard and okay, hold on. Desktop for a second. Desktop. Okay, give me a second. Let me go to all right, might as well reveal my secrets. All right. In case you didn't know, I put all my notes in the CSS or the HTML section, just way down on the bottom so you can't see it. But it's a neat way for me to just follow along. So here, copy this. So go into the CSS section and copy this form string. Now that I copied the form string, heck, you could just copy the whole thing and paste it, and you'd be done. Okay, so there, I pasted the entire form into the backticks. Okay, so let's see what happens. It should work in terms of clicking the button. So if I click on tweet, I should see a form. Here we go. Click. Ta-da! And so notice, how did I get that article title? In this case, I use just article title in template literals. So the last thing is, oh, question. Oh, yeah, I could save it, right? Yeah. Okay, save. Okay, I just saved my own CodePen. If you choose to go back to my CodePen, you'll see everything we've done so far saved. In case you made a typo somewhere. Matt. Okay, I just hit save on mine. So go back to my CodePen, fork my CodePen now because it's updated and saved to our current state. And then try the tweet button now. Good, okay. So the last thing, according to the video that I showed you, is when you click on share, the web page changes again, and it just displays your tweet has been posted, as well as console logging, tweet by author, whatever I said. Basically, get the author name in the console. So here we go. So in line 67, 68, upon clicking the share button, console tweeting article by the author's name, and also display a heading or an H1 tag that reads, your tweet has been posted. So how do we do that? So this time, now here's the trick though. Because we just inner HTML'd all of this, notice that all of this includes a new button, which we now have to get. So notice that means I can't put my code here in line 69. That doesn't make sense for JavaScript. It has to come right after the inner HTML statement because we're dealing with the asynchronous nature of JavaScript. Because if I put my code out here, it's not going to do anything. It can only work once the actual button is inserted in the DOM. So once the button is inserted in the DOM, then yeah, now you can grab the button because it exists. Let's get it. So const share equals document.query selector, and I believe I had an ID of share on that button. And let's add a click event listener on that. So share.add event listener. Click. Prevent default again. And then we're going to console log what I wanted. So tweeting article by, oops, what's the matter here? I can't use regular single quotes. I have to use the backticks if I want to use a template literal. Article.author. And if I want to if I want to clear the page again and just put an H1 tag saying your tweet has been posted, I'm just going to use my news, right? Because remember back up here, I said this one, const news equals the whole entire section. So I'll just say news.innerHTML equals, I'll just say H1 tags, your tweet has been posted. That's it. I think that's the end. Let's try it out. So let me get my console up. Console is there. Clear it. I'm going to click on tweet. Tweet. Right. I'm going to click on share. As soon as I click on share, I anticipate something in the console as well as the page. Here we go. Click. There it is. Your tweet has been posted. Tweeting article by Robin. Cool. Yeah. Simple, right? Okay. Here, I'm going to share a big hint. Notice where I got this from. I got it from Tachyons. Notice the actual template has 3, not 1, 3. I wonder how you would code it if you had to deal with 3 instead of just the 1. I'll just leave it at that. I'll give you another hint. As I was marking the in-class exercise and labs, what I see a lot of is, you know, you have 3 things, and then some of you may decide to do this. You query selector the first one, then you basically copy that whole section, paste it again, just change the variable name. You try to query the selector the second one, and do the same thing for the third one. So you basically have all this repetitive code. You know you're doing something wrong if you're repeating your code. Okay, so I'm just saying you just have to map over it and do something different. You don't want to do all this stuff anymore. You want to do something different. Okay, cool. That's my big hint to you. Cool. What time is it? Awesome. So, before we go on a break, so for your lab, you're just going to complete 3A and 3B of assignment 1. So just a reminder of what that is. Clicking on the compose button will open a new form where you can enter your email. Also, use your GitHub's avatar URL to get the picture. Okay. So the form should show all the relevant fields. And after the data is entered, clicking the send button will create a new email in your inbox. Ta-da! Stuff we did already. Okay, so that's your lab. And don't think of it as extra, because it's the same part of the assignment. It's not extra work. You're just handing me the assignment, right? So it shouldn't be anything extra. Cool. Wonderful. So before we go on the break, any questions or comments? Timer. All right, let's go for 10 minutes. Come back in 10. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, because this is an in-class exercise, submit your CodePen in Blackboard. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I didn't mark lab for you. Yes. So, yeah. Instead of first of all, is that you'll notice. Selected slide. If you look closely, you can see, especially if you this is great. So how do they do that? Look here. There's a class here. So instead of styling a yellow, just do add class. So you can say over this. Yeah. So you can say this element dot class list dot add in brackets email edit stuff. It'll look like that. So that's one thing. Now another thing was. Come over here for a second. Come over here. Yeah.
Okay, I have sent
Yeah.
this link.
Okay.
It is a private account, so I have to collaborate.
Yes. Invite me as a collaborator. Yes. Let me find what I did last time. I think it was last week I did something. Oh, this one. Filter one. So look at my CodePen, how I did that. Click. See, the styling is gone. How did I do that? I did that. What in here? Here's my. Here's my magic line. Magic line right here. Here. So what I did was I made everything false. So I'm mapping over all the elements and I'm saying your property called selected is false on all of them. And then the one that I clicked on, which is this array, is selected as true. And then render it. That's my trick. But you do the same trick.
So can we do? Actually, I just want to recall the thing.
I mean, you could do it another way, like however way you could do it that way. But this for me was an easy way, because I think another whatever way you choose to do it, it might be harder in the long run in terms of maintenance. Yeah, but that's how I did it.
I just one more thing.
One more thing, okay. Now, that's what you can't do. Okay, so you have to do it yourself. You can't do it the way it's on. I'll show you. This is basically. The problem is when I look at all your code. Just like grab and then I just have this back, right? Like if you're gonna try to change your code. So yeah, so that's why that doesn't count. Okay, because you apologize.
Have you sent? Excuse me. And can I just send you the email? Oh, sorry, the file.
Just submit it again in Blackboard. Should be. If that doesn't work, email it. If that doesn't work, it should be. Yeah. Oh yeah, but it's pretty slick, right? How like literally all of it. Oh yeah, I love that. Like, I love that. You like it. I get excited about that too. Oh yeah. Yeah, I try to like monitor it. Yeah, basically all So the H thing is means well actually instead of say you call it as a phrase, and it would just start that function, but then it would move on to the next step. If you see a wait keyword, it will actually wait until this is done and then return the result. Yeah. Yeah, so you have to make sure the function makes it. So what does it mean? That
Yeah. It's basically the search is good. Basically checking out this. And if it is null, that will be minor. Yeah, that's what I'm saying about like the whole object, right? I've basically set this up, so if I want to use a different type-based search method, storage class, make sure it has the same functions, and I can just pass it. That's why I did it. Honestly, it's like, well, I'm basically what I'm going to nice supervisor, smart he would just teach me stuff. Yeah. So, I was trying to like.
Yes.
You can actually say that you set an object of C, which is a and then when you call the function, you just put whatever type your task is in right. So whenever you click something, what's happening is it would be like information about save, about details, or pass X, Y, on it. So if you console that, as the type. And this function will actually recognize values if you're passing it to it based on this, and then you can do everything based on which type is actually being passed, right? Super cool. Oh, it's yeah. Okay, so you can they're all classes. So you can basically create classes so like, okay, pretend using is a class. It's basically a class. It's great. The reason why, because it's not an actual race, I can do more like race. So I can potentially create like 15 of them. I can call this function, but I do it in 10 different variables. I have 10 different instances. So no, so basically like seems to make sense. So pretend you have
Okay, because you're looping it. You're doing a for loop inside a loop. You're looping within a loop. Like you're doing a for loop within a map. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
All right, so let's continue. We're going to move on to a new topic. All right, so this new topic, it's new to JavaScript. It's called destructuring. And it's really a really good way to get out some of that old-fashioned code habits that we used to know and love, but now there's a new way of doing the same thing. So if you can go to this slide and right-click this code pen here and fork that, so you have your own copy. And the first example I have on destructuring is this first one here with the const person equals. So I want you to just take away that comment. By the way, if you want to comment or uncomment something really fast in CodePen or in VS Code, what you could do is press the Control key and then press the what is that? The forward slash or the backslash? The backslash, the one with the question mark on it, as well as the slash. So if I say Control slash, it either comments it or uncomment it. Okay, so you could do that. All right, so uncomment my const person equals Sheldon array. Okay. So here under old way, I say, how would you assign the Sheldon value to a variable called first? How would you assign the Cooper value to a variable called last, etc.? And you can see here in the comment section, you might do something like this. You might say const first equals person equals 0, right? And const last equals person is 1. That's how you might typically go about it in the old programming sense, right? And so that when you console log all of this, so let me quickly uncomment that. So if I uncomment all of that, you can see here it's console logging the elements in the array, right? Console log first, last, Twitter, IQ. Okay, stuff you already know, no big deal, nothing new. Let me comment that out. We still have our const person. Here's the new way using destructuring. And I put a link here to the MDN page for this. So if we copy that link and go to that link, here's the new thing. Let me zoom it in. We're gonna have something like this. In our example, we had something like this. We had const equals 10, 20, right? And then you could say something like this. Oops, not const equals. My array equals. Here we could say my array. So you could have an array, and destructuring means you're picking apart the individual elements and assigning them immediately to a variable of your choice. So here, if I just say, because we're dealing with an array, I can destructure it and assign variable A and B to be 10 and 20 immediately. I don't have to do the long way, the old traditional way of my array 0 equals A, or A equals my array 0, and B equals my array 2 in square brackets. Rather, you could just have one line now, saving that code space, and it's just much more efficient. Okay. I also want to point out this example here on line 11 in their documentation. This is something that we haven't come across yet. It looks like the spread. Actually, hold on. Is this no? This is the rest operator. This is not the spread operator, even though it uses the ... So just as a reference, the rest parameter syntax allows us to represent an indefinite number of arguments as an array. So how it works is, you can say the first element, in this case it's 10, that's going to be put into A. The second element, in this case 20, will be put into B. And I don't care about the rest, so put all of them into rest, ... rest. So that when you console log rest, you get an array of just that. That's something new. So let's try that with our CodePen example. Okay. So first, let's do the traditional example. I want you to try to assign first name to Sheldon into first, Cooper into last, and the rest into rest. So try that for a minute and see what happens. So on line 12, you're going to say something like this. You're going to say first, comma, last, comma, dot, 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 rest equals what? Person, yes. Now if I console log first, last, and rest, there you see it in my console log. I have my Sheldon, which is first, Cooper, which is last, and my rest is an array of the remaining elements in the array. That's something new in JavaScript. Cool. Now, what I'm teaching you here, you don't have to use it for the assignment. This is like more stuff in the future, just good to know in case you want to use it to make your code more efficient. Okay, let's comment out all of that. So comment out my person and comment out that. So in line 16, where I have an example, I want you to uncomment line 17, 18, and 19. And this is just another example of the same thing we just did. Okay, so we have a team of Wes, Harry, Sarah, Keegan, Riker. We assigned it using destructuring. We plucked out Wes to be the captain, Harry to be the assistant, and then the remaining people to be in the variable players. So that when I console log players, you can see that array here. Or if I console log captain, it should be. So notice the big idea is you can pluck values from an array now, and it's basically position based. So whatever you put here, whatever variable name you put here, that'll always be the first one, etc. Question: What happens if I put? I didn't plan on this, but what happens if I put dot 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 players between captain and assistant? I'm wondering what that will do. I think I know the answer. I'm going to console log. Will do. Did that do? Oh, hold on. Unexpected token. I guess I didn't like that. Oh, yeah, I guess you can't do that. I thought you could, but you can't. Never mind. That was just my curiosity. Okay, so comment out line 17, 18, 19. We don't need that anymore. We're going, now that was an array. That was destructuring an array. You could destructure an object. So if you uncomment the lines 28 to 33, and I have a person again, but this time it's instead of an array, it's in an object format, and I have the first name to be Sheldon, last name Cooper. So the old way is if you want to assign a variable to the respective value using the above object, you would say something like this: const first equals person dot first, right? We've done that before. Const last equals person dot last, right? So if I run this code right now, you should see Sheldon Cooper. The new way, so let me comment that out, is to destructure using the same thing. And let's look at this example here on this page. So, object destructuring is you just use the squiggly bracket to be the same thing. So this P will take on the value of 42, and this Q will take on the value of true, as you can see in this console log. Okay. Now that only works if you have some kind of var or let or const here. That won't work in this example below it. So if you don't have the var in front of it, then you have to use these brackets, the round brackets, to make it work. Otherwise, if you just start off with a squiggly bracket, it'll think you're trying to do a block of code. So you have to use the round brackets. Okay. So let us try this. Oh, shoot. whenever I say your answer below, I wanted that to be blank so that you could try, but I think I messed that one up. So uncomment lines 42 and 43. See the effect of that. You can see in the console, it's outputting Sheldon Cooper again. This time using object destructuring. I said const, and then have the squiggly brackets. I put in my whatever variable names I want there. But notice I can't just put any variable names. Like if I put in garbage, ASDF, and console log that, will it work? Right, undefined, because that has to correspond to my actual object key. See how I got undefined here? Because I used some garbage here. Because there's no such thing as ASDF in my person. I'm destructuring and I'm plucking off the individual keys from this person object. That's why this works. Oh, okay. Yeah, got over that. Right. Okay. Look, check this out over here. If you scroll down a little bit more on the MDN website until you see this one, assigning to new variable names. What's really cool is you can, if you don't like the names that the object is using, you can assign it new names. So here's the example. They have a var o equals this object, and they're destructuring again, but this time, instead of just simple p and q, they say p colon foo, which means the new variable name will be foo, and q colon bar, which means the new variable name will be bar for q. So that when you console log foo, it'll be p's value, and bar will be q's value. That's something new. Okay. So let's try that in line 47. 47 here. I'm asking you I'm asking you to try assigning different variable names. So try assigning right now in 1 minute. Try assigning the word primary and the word secondary instead of first and last. Okay, so that this line 48 should work. Try that in the next minute. All right, so what you should have gotten, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this as a template for me to use. Just going to quickly paste this as a comment. So I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say const, and then like before, I had first and last just like before, equals person. But to assign a new name, after the word first, I'm going to put colon, and then the name of what I want. In this case, I want primary. Then for last, secondary. Now my console log statement works. Sheldon Cooper. That's something new. Yeah, it's basically shortcuts. Let's skip to line, in my code pen, let's skip to comment out everything else above that. And let's skip to line 58, nested destructuring. So uncomment line 59 through 72. So if you look at line 74 for a second, you'll see that I'm trying to assign a value of Twitter. So I'm trying to get this Twitter value of Bazinga, and I want to assign Bazinga to a variable name called Twitter. The old way, which is what we've done perhaps before, is sheldon.links.social.twitter and assign that value into Twitter. That's the old way. Okay, so if I run this code right now, if I uncomment it, it should work. See, it's console logging Twitter and Facebook using the old way. Let me comment that out. So we're still going to use the same Sheldon object. Now in line 79, the new way, And it says, I put a link here, refer to this link. Okay, let's check that out. I put there. Right. So here is the same thing. You have var metadata, and metadata is just like our Sheldon object. It's huge. And then in the end, I'm assigning that metadata. So I'm saying equals metadata, but inside I'm destructuring it. And I'm picking off the title. So this title represents Scratchpad, but I'm giving it a new title called English title. So I could say console log English title, and that should be Scratchpad. What did I do here? Actually, this is not me, this is them. So what are they doing here? Oh, it's an array. So they're destructuring an array. And yeah, okay, cool. Didn't know that. So anyways, back to our code pen. How would you destruct Twitter and Facebook using the new way? So what you could do, again, here's Sheldon, our object. So you know you're going to say something equals Sheldon. Given. And here in my console log statement in line 82, let me just comment that. So I have two variable names, Twitter and Facebook. So you know I'm going to destructure into those. So I'm going to say const Twitter, Facebook somehow. But this is not going to work. So you have undefined, undefined here. But notice that Twitter and Facebook is under social in terms of the hierarchy. So what if I said Sheldon.links.social? If I say Sheldon.links.social, that work? Yes. Okay, so that, again, that's just, I'm showing you just different ways that destructuring can be used. How do you rename it? So same thing with the array destructuring where you can rename it. Same thing for the objects. You can rename it as well. So let me just console or comment out 8182 for a second. So let me uncomment line 91. So here we can, I put a link on how to rename something while you're destructuring an object. So if I go to that link, let's check that link out. Oh, did I just say that already? I think I did. I mentioned this already. So you could say :foo :bar. Same thing here. If you want to rename it tweet and Facebook, you could say something like this. So I'm going to copy line 81, which is what I had before, paste it to line 90. So instead of Twitter and Facebook, I don't. Let's pretend I don't like those names. I can say : tweet, and then Facebook : FB. And that works too in the console. All right. Let me comment that out. Comment out Sheldon object. You can even swap values, which when I saw this, I thought, yes, no more the old way. So how would you normally swap values in the old programming style of things? So let me just look at this one for a second. So not line 98, you probably coded this many, many times where you have a variable A, another variable B, and how would you normally swap those two values? Normally, you'd need introduce a third variable called temp, for example, and assign A to temp, and then do your swapping. So that A is equal to B, and then B is equal to temp. That's normally how you would do it in the old traditional programming style. The new way, let me uncomment that. And I have a link here, so let's check out that link. Swapping variables. Let's check that out. Here it is. Here's the new way. So we have variable A, variable B. You could just say this in one line. A comma B equals B comma A. That's awesome. When I saw that, I said, yes, no more of the old way. Right, so here, let's try it out. I have a variable here, variable A, variable B. I want you to try to swap those two values so that the line 111 will prove that to you. Line 108 and line 111 will prove that to you. So I'll give you a few seconds to try that out. All right, so what you could have done, similar to what we see here in the documentation, you could say something like this. You could say first last equals last first. So here in my console, you'll see the evidence of that. So here's my first console log statement, and then here's my second one. That's cool. Comment that out. Let's uncomment lines 115 to 116. So here, we can destructure a string, but not really, because we're going to turn it into an array. So here I have a string, and I assign it to a variable called data. However, I'm going to use the split method on that string. So what the split method does, this is important for the midterm. Split method splits a string object into an array of strings by separating the string into substrings. So let's see the example here. So here's their example. They have a sentence. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, and they assign it to a variable called string. However, they then say the string.split, and this basically means for every space that you see, that means that's the marker that splits it up. So that means, let's see here. That means this is now in an array of element 0 or index 0. This one here is index 1, 2, 3. So that means if I say words with the index of 3, it should output fox. Okay. So here, notice in my string, I have a string, but instead of spaces, I'm separating it with commas. So if I split using the comma character, it's going to transform it into an array. So this is going to be an element 0, this is going to be an element 1, etc. So that means if I console log item name, it should be basketball. There it is. Okay. No. That out. This is something new. Default values. You can have default values when destructuring. So I have a link here. Check that out. And this is just nice to know. You don't need to necessarily do this for assignment. It's just good to know. So here, you can have default values. A variable can be assigned a default in case that the value unpacked from the array is undefined. So here, notice that this array only has one element. So that means this A will get that 1, which is why when you say console log A, it's 1. But notice this array only has one element. It does not have a second element. Therefore, when you try to destructure the second element, there's nothing to look at. But you can say equals 7, which is the default value of that, so that when you say console log B, it has 7. That's extremely useful. Like how many times in your functions where you're passing in an argument or a parameter and you're checking whether or not that parameter is undefined and then doing something with that. Now you can have default values in your functions. So in my example, if we uncomment line 124 and uncomment line 129, what am I saying here? So let's pretend that these are this object here where I say width and height. Let's pretend that these are going to be your settings for this paragraph tag. So you'll notice in my HTML section, I have just one paragraph element with hello world. Here's here in my web page. I want to assign some styling to that. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to say create a new destructure variable called bgcolor with the default value of green and a font size with a default value of 50. Okay, so, and let's set that up. So what we could say is something like this. We could say const. Let's get the width and the height for now. And notice how here in line 125, I say assign default values of 100 for width and height, but also unpack those values from the above. Okay, so what I'm saying is I'm passing in width with 300 and height 300. But if I had passed width with nothing, or not even width, rather, then it'll have width of 100 by default. How do I do that? So here I could say const width, and the default value is 100. So I'll just say equals 100. Okay, so what's happening in here again is it'll inherit 100 if nothing is passed, but it'll use 300 in this case because that exists, and it won't use 100. Height equals 100. And then here, when I say create a new destructor variable called bgcolor with a default value of green, I could just declare it here. I could just say bgcolor equals green, font size equals 50, something like that, and equal to settings. So when I say equal settings, this whole object tries to fit itself into my variables. Well, it could do that for weight and height, but it doesn't do that for BG color and font size. But that's okay because I have default values here. Now, if I try to set my hello world paragraph to the style above, I could say something like this: p set attribute style, and then I'm going to use backticks here. And so I could basically say the width will be whatever I had with pixels. Whoops. Height will be whatever height I had pixels. Background color is G color, and font size there. See, my hello world just changed. Okay, so that's something you may want to consider using. And the final thing I have here is on default parameters. What am I saying here? So let me just uncomment lines 143, 147, and 151, 55. Basically, 143 to 147 is a function, but let's pretend that the tip could change. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be 13% or 15%. And what if it's undefined? You know, so what you could do is, so this is the old way, but actually I didn't even check for the tip there, did I? Or the tax. But here's the new way, regardless, here's the new way. You could just say in your function, you could just add equals whatever you want, right? So tax equals 13%. So that means if I call calculate bill with just one argument, here is just 100. That 100 goes into this variable total, but there's nothing to pass in for tax, right? There's nothing else. So that's okay. The default parameter, or the default value rather, for tax is there, and same thing for the tip. So that this function can still run normally, right? If you compare that to something you might normally have done in the past, where in here you'd say if tax equals undefined and do something with that kind of thing, like you can totally eliminate all of that just by having default parameters now. And that is it for destructuring and default parameters. Let me just go back to my slides. What am I? Okay. Reduce. Yeah, we're gonna take a quick break. I think that was a lot. You need another break. So even though it's a little bit earlier than what I would normally break at, we'll take a break here. And I have a feeling we'll end up being done early today. So that's good. And then you can ask me questions for your assignment if you have bugs or stuff. All right. So any questions or comments so far before we take a break? Minutes. No, it will take 20 minutes this time because I think it will end up early. So we'll take a 20-minute break this time. Okay. So what's the question? Sorry. Okay, yeah, that's a lot. Yeah. Same. Yeah. The first 2 weeks, I was like, I kept coming to really like everything. First of all, I
I got out from some personal matter there. That's why I was not able to submit my
Lab 4?
and then 3 and 4.
What's your name?
Hamid, I have sent email also, but I have
Did I reply to that? He sent me an email? Like today? Or a long time ago?
before.
Har Mendes.
Some ideas carry see it.
This one? Is that you? This one?
This is previous ones. One more agency.
What? Oh, I said something here. What did I say?
That this was previous.
Oh, that was. Oh, so that's not it?
No.
I don't see another email here. Are you sure you emailed me? Let me check my trash. If I accidentally, let me see if I can search. That's all I got. I don't see an email here. Unless it's very, very on the bottom here. No. Are you sure you emailed me? I don't see it.
Can I send now?
You can send it to lab 3, lab 4, or do tonight.
Yeah, so like everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that just wouldn't be right.
Yeah, Sarah said she's got
That works. How's it?
I don't know, it's kind of cool. That's a song. It's always a type. Always a type.
And question, is there any way to try on code anything?
No, it's fun.
That's the one downside to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love that for me.
Yeah, okay. And
So,
can I
yeah,
ask
anytime I
you-
got there, I was
can I ask you one more question?
It was fun. I like that.
This is maybe, honestly, if you can just give me a hint, this is maybe what I'm doing wrong. So I had a function right here, a list of
I just didn't trust him for some reason. I called him out every time I got him.
Right. I'm clicking it, listening to what I crash.
Oh, yeah.
I have a variable for my emails already, I have a variable for my inbox.
Oh,
If I
yeah.
wanted to pass them into the render
I find,
function,
I just like pick focus strategy.
I
I kind of
render
look at people's faces,
the
see if they're making any like small or
in there.
movements or they're
and
looking
then
at
I
their
have function
eyes.
render view, which
What's
like,
that?
map which I thought should be mapping whatever I.
Yeah, I'm just looking into their eyes. Like, you can tell that when you're
But
like,
it's not actually
somebody,
spitting.
either they look
As soon as I
confident or
chose
they're
that. Prior, I was like, oh, I can just call that emails, but then I a conditional that says.
Oh, yeah.
To basically.
I'm gonna try and
move
make
them
that
in one store.
next week.
But not-
Yeah, I want to fix the strategy for everybody. I can still use that with the strategy. So, like all of those stuff. Not necessarily easy, but like, it's not like it'd be like working.
Both of them don't work out, and I'm trying to pass them.
Yeah.
After I parsed it, yeah, so before it was working, so like if I go here to console.
It'd be a really cool idea. It's like, basically like a electronic keyboard that you could play
Now
like,
here actually
like
probably.
complex strategy is like or something. Where it would just be like, just like you touch screen and you could just like, and it would automatically calculate it for you instead of having to like every time be like, you know, when I'm attacking you're like, company's gonna take like 20 minutes to balance.
Here I have.
I'm sure that's. Yeah. I was thinking too, like, imagine you took like, augmented reality. So you could see like, you could see your character wear colors and stuff like that on your table and see the monsters with like. I only use it once. Before I never use any. There is a job. Albert showed it. I think Albert showed it. Yeah. It works something.
Okay, so my click event, well, I have to hash it through again. So
Oh, yeah.
this is a function that I call to the render.
So can we play with the
I highlight. So then once it's rendered, it's gonna, if you click on one of those.
Oh, yeah. Is that like the games in our VR or?
Or when I render my inbox, because that's what I've now. My first selector was expressed.
This is one that I thought kind of cool. It's like a game where you're one person's like the helper together, but other they're like filling over a factory. And there's all these robots in the factory, and then 4 people can pretend to be robots, and you have to try and like hit the buttons on every side of the factory. And the person who's like pick robots up, put them in the shredder. And you have to find all the human robots inside of it before they it's so fun.
Okay, well, that at least is a start. It's actually setting stuff back there, so I can mess with it from there.
Yeah.
And try to figure it out, and if not, like I'm gonna go to the library right after.
Oh yeah.
I don't.
That's cool.
Just.
Yeah.
And say just pass them.
Yeah. That already has to be there. That way. Oh yeah.
So whatever.
Well, that click function is.
Yeah, my
strictly
girlfriend
for
likes
highlight.
it.
Oh,
It's
sorry,
just-
sorry.
Yeah. so
There's
that's
no
a-
risk.
Oh, you can use it for.
We were at the game.
Those that say.
Yeah, you don't want to. Yes.
That's what I would.
Okay, because I have it here. Because I know the class, and then we leave through all of them, after all of them.
Oh yeah.
And then we took the one that was clicked and set it to true to highlight.
Yeah, I
And
will.
then I basically just take back and it's very capacity.
I wish we could able to like keep watching the band, like a list of all the cards that you did, so that like you can see the whole thing. So you're back to- Oh, really?
Yeah, and yeah, so why would it be?
Yeah, it's like,
So when
I
on
want to get more
default,
expansion,
all
but
the trash after that, they're both showing as selected. So do I need to leave through and show them as all unselected?
Maybe. We want to do it.
Set the default before it gets, as I put it, when it goes to- not until it moves through and you click it.
Yeah.
Set the default, so it's everything clicked, still have to hear.
yeah.
So maybe.
So we actually need to like.
The problem is we need to layer.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus, that's too circle.
It takes that property.
So maybe. Take off that. Before.
I want to kind of like mix
So-
and match.
Before you store it.
Yeah. So selected the false and say.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's fine.
Okay, that makes sense.
So basically everything that you need to know
Yeah.
is stored as an object. With the property selected, and then you just filter on that.
See, that's what he did, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what I did do. That's what Josh was saying, that it makes a lot of sense.
So like, or you could do others, you could forget that, and then you could do the array.
Oh, yeah.
Are you doing the array method where you're pushing?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
You're gonna be like, well, like, like
Then
all good
you
warrior
lost
cards, like are you gonna play like on my wall
Yeah.
or
You might question that.
wizard?
It is a lot so far.
So that's why I think the
Like counting
object
characters.
way.
Do you have like a good, like YouTube video
Oh,
that you
yeah.
put on Blackboard is just to, because I've already put so much into this, I probably won't change it, but just to have additional learning for it,
Yeah.
if you do.
Yeah, so actually, in week 5, we must already, there's, no, not even week 5. I mean, there's 3 classes. Like 3 classes. This is watch. You watch, before that, we should do, or we do to a series of 30 videos.
I want to say that on that one, stories,
All of them are
big stories about.
But they all touch upon the same.
That was, I don't know if it's
Maybe. I'll do that.
I'll probably end up seeing it in the library. Got all of it. Thanks, Albert.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So open up.
Okay, 0-0. All right. So the final stretch is reduce. So if you can go to my slide on reduce, and there's a code pen here, so fork this one. So So you should have this in your screen, which again I put in my slides. So go to my code pen, fork that one, so you have your own copy. So again, reduce is the third big array method. So we've already learned map and filter. Reduce is the final one, and this will be the when I said last week for the midterm, there's one question that no one got except for one. This is it. So so let's learn reduce. So we already know this inventors array that we worked on before, but this time we're going to use reduce on it. So the question is, how many years did all the inventors live? Let's take a look at the documentation for reduce. When I first saw reduce, at first I didn't quite get it, but then it kind of made sense. So let's say you have an array called array 1. What you could say, and they did the shorthand here, but what you could say is dot reduce on that, and now they're calling reducer. So let me just copy and paste this whole thing, cut it, and put it in here. Just to. So what's happening here is, think of like, you've probably had assignments in the past where you had to loop. You had to try to calculate a total of something or a sum of something, and you had probably had a for loop, and you had an array, and sum equals sum plus current array I kind of thing. You'll probably all did that kind of thing, right? So this is kind of like this. Reduce is kind of like that, but much more powerful. Again, reduce. Think of reduce as you have an array of objects, and that could be one to many, and the output will only be one and always be one. One of something. Could be an element. It could be something. An object could be totally different. So what's happening here is this first parameter. Actually, I'll begin with the second parameter. So you all know array dot. If I say array1 dot map, if I said word and then some index and then some function, but yada yada yada. So this represents each of these elements as it goes through the loop, right? That's what that represents. It's the first parameter in the method map. Well, in reduce, it's not the first parameter. It's the second parameter. That's the first thing big idea I want to say. So this current value is like the same thing as the first parameter in map, but it's the second parameter. Okay, just keep that in mind. Next big idea is whatever is in the first parameter is a sum total of what's happening so far. Okay, so what's going to happen is, let's see if there's another example. Simpler example. Okay, let's go to my code pen. That's it. So I want to add all the years that all these inventors lived, which means I have to figure out the difference between the year they were born, the year they died, get that difference, add it to my accumulator or reduce, and do the same thing for all of them. So let's just start with this. We'll say const total years equals, and we'll use inventors because reduce can only work on an array. So our array is called inventors. Then you say, just like how we had inventors.map, inventors.filter, now we have inventors.reduce. And you need two parameters. The second parameter is this current inventor, right? Then the first parameter is your accumulator. I'm going to just say total for now. Third thing you need to enter is the reduce. You need to give it what's your beginning value for this total, right? So just like how you probably added an array before, and just inside your for loop, you probably had like for bracket I equals 0, right? Remember that I equals 0 in your for loop because you're initializing I to be 0. Well, reduce needs an initialization value as well, and how you define it is just after this last squiggly bracket, you put in your 0, comma 0. Kind of weird. Okay, so it begins with 0. So total will have a beginning value of 0. Now, inside the brackets is you could do anything you want, as long as you return something that the accumulator can handle. Okay, so let's figure out this. So we need to figure out the difference between birth and death. So we know we eventually want to say something like this. We want to say inventor dot past minus inventor dot year. That will give us the difference. Right? We know we have to say that somewhere in our statement. But we also want to add that difference to whatever we've previously accumulated, which is represented by this variable name called total. So total, again, represents everything we've so far accumulated. So we can add that total. So total plus that. And finally, you want to return that. Console log right now, console log our variable name, total years. It should work. 861. This method reduce is very, very powerful. From the podcasts that I've listened to, reduce has been used for all kinds of inventive ways. I'm just showing you a very simple way right now. Let's try something else with reduce. Does that make sense so far? Simple, right? Try something else. So if you scroll down to line 25-ish, is another exercise. So I have here this time an array of different vehicles, and you have to sum up all the instances of each of these types of vehicles so that the end of the game, reduce will output this one object that has a count of all the different vehicles. So here, as you can see, there's bike 2. That's because if you look at the whole array, there's only 2 bikes. 1, 2. Okay. So how do we do that using reduce? Try this. So const, I'll call it transportation equals data dot reduce. Already know that there's going to be 2 parameters. So I'm going to say second parameter will be our current this current vehicle. We'll just say item. And then our first parameter is our accumulator. So right now we didn't initialize it with 0, but we're going to in a second. So we're going to pass in an object, right? Because that's what we want. Our final here in line 27, this is just one object, right? Then after the item bracket, you need the squiggly brackets. Oh, wait, first of all, you need the arrow function. Before we type whatever's in the code, let's initialize our 0, so to speak. Now, because we're not dealing with values to sum up something, we're dealing with an object, we have to pass in what? In here. What do you think we'll pass in here? For the initialization. What's our 0, so to speak? If we're dealing with, at the end of the game, we're dealing with an object. So what do I put in here, do you think? Yeah, squiggly bracket, an empty object. And in here, eventually I'm going to say return this object, but I'm going to change that object in the line above the lines above it. Okay. So the big idea is we're modifying object as we go along the array, and then we're trying to accumulate how many things we see. So how to do this? Well, what you could do is you can ask a question. If what? If our object, actually before I move on, let me just remind ourselves of objects. So the question is, how do you access certain properties? Answer, you could use that, object dot whatever. Oh, it's not even here. And my here, this is what I wanted. You could say, in this case, if you wanted name, you could say person.name, which is what they have here. Oh shoot, that's not what I wanted. Basically, I wanted the one where you could have use this, but not just the index, but you could actually use, oh, there, bracket notation. Ah, that's what I wanted. Okay, this is what I wanted. Yeah, I found it. So instead of saying person.age, an equivalent of that and using bracket notation is person age in the square brackets. That's the same exact thing. Okay, because that's the method I'm going to use here for our exercise. So the question I want to ask is, as we're going through each individual item in the array, I want to ask, was this accounted for in the past? Or is this the first time we're seeing it? So how do you kind of ask that? Using the bracket notation. What you could say is this. Obj, if not obj, item. This is saying, let's pretend for the first time it's this one. This first element is car. So that means car is in item. So that means car is here. So let's pretend this is car. It's saying, does this object have car already as a key? If so, give the opposite value of that. If false, give the opposite value of that. So that means if false, that means we don't have car as a key. So the evaluation of this is false, but the not will make it true, which means we want to do something. Yes, we've identified a new vehicle, and we want to do something with that. What do you want to do? We want to initialize it, and we're going to say something like this. Object item equals 0. We're initializing car to be 0 inside the object. It's almost as if we're saying now, okay, this empty object in reduce has just been inserted with a car with 0. That's what we just did with this line of code. We just inserted a new car of 0. And then the final line after the if statement, we could say something like this. Object with that item plus plus. Now it'll access this value and add 1 to this property, so that car is now equal to 1. So the next time around, for the element 2, it sees this one and says, oh, wait, we have that already. So it skips this block of code entirely, and it goes right to this line here, line 34, and then says, OK, add 1 more to there. So at the end of the day, it should build a list of vehicles with their counts. So let's see if that is true. Let's console log. Let me clear my console here. Let's console log transportation, console.log transportation. Object, bike 2, car 5, hogo stick 1. This pattern is a very good pattern to know. That's all I had for that one. Yes. Close that up. Here's a hint for the midterm. So the one question in the midterm that no one got last year that I'm hinting at here. Let's do this together. What is the total amount of seconds in this YouTube playlist? So I've provided a link here called total this. If you right click that new tab, you'll get skip. All right. So here's what I want you to do. Here's the guy's playlist. Okay. The challenge is, what is the total amount of seconds? Here's the answer, that. We'll go through this line by line, but that's the answer. We'll see how that works. Second, notes. All right. So we're going to do the same thing. The strategy is this. We're going to document selector all of these times, because I believe if you right click and inspect it, here's the time, 1939. It's within a span tag, so it's just pure text. So we're going to document selector all of these span tags with the text in it. Then that gives us a document selector all gives us a node list. So we have to use the spread operator to give us an array. We want an array because we want to use reduce. Okay, so we'll just do this in the console. So notice here the span, the class here I want to target is this class right here. So I'm going to copy that and use that in my code. So now that I copied it, I'm going to go to the console. Let's clear that console out. Let's say, let's give it a name. We'll call it time blocks equals. We want to query selector all, but I know that's going to give me a node list, so I want a spread operator. Document query selector all. What goes inside that? It's our class that we previously copied. Class, we want a dot, paste that out. So let's console log that just to see what we're working with. If I say time blocks, there, I get all 39. If I click on the arrow, so notice how it's highlighting the appropriate DOM element. Cool. All right. The next thing is we're going to use reduce on that. So now that we got our time blocks, we can say something like this: let TS, and that'll represent total amount of seconds. Again, we want the total amount of seconds of all those videos. So that's what reduce will do. It'll give us a sum total of that. So we got our array called time blocks because we use the spread operator, which means we can now use the reduce method on it. So to look at each individual element in the array, that's the second parameter. We'll call that individual time block. Whereas the first parameter is the accumulator, right? Just like the sum total. So we'll call that total seconds. Oh, because it's two parameters, we need round brackets encapsulating that. After that first round bracket, we need an arrow function, curly bracket, and we'll just say shift enter enter just to make some space. Let's see what we're dealing with. I'm just going to console log each time block, and just for now, I'm going to what's our default value? First of all, our default value is 0. So let's put a comma 0 after the squiggly bracket. For now, we'll just say we know we're going to return total seconds because that will be our accumulator, but we're going to manipulate total seconds above that in a second. Now that's how we set it up. For now, I just want to console log what we're working with, which is time block. So let's just say console log time block. See what happens if I say enter. Oh, so I get all the different spans. Okay, but I don't want those elements. I just want the time. So how do I get that? I could say time block.text content, which will give me just the 1257, for example, in that case. Does that work? Let's see. Let's just try it out. So let's do that again. Let me clear that out. Click on the up arrow to get that code again. So what if I say time block.text content? Let's see if that gives me just the time. Oh, because I said let previously, it's not going to let me say let again. So I'll just remove the let. So it's just TS. Enter. Okay, I got the times. Now, you may have noticed that the length of each string based on the indentation is like there's white space. I don't want that white space. So what is the string method in JavaScript to eliminate any white space for strings? Figure it out. Let's up arrow. The answer is .trim. Now if I trim it and press enter, see now I have a string and the white space is all removed. The indentation is removed. Okay, we're getting closer. Yeah, cleared out, Control L, up arrow, getting closer. So I got all the times, 12:57, 9:54, whatever. How am I going to get the individual hour and minute? The strategy I'm going to use is destructuring. Now, destructuring, I could say something like this. I could say, actually, before I do that, in order to use destructuring, I need to split. This is where split comes in handy for the midterm. I'm going to split the string up, and I'm going to look for the marker of colon. So the split will give me an array of 2 elements, one with the hour and one with the minutes. Let's see what happens if I enter that. There. So now I have an array of all the different times split into individual elements in the array, which I can then use to destructure. So let's try that again. Clear it out, Control L, up arrow. So in my second line here, I can say something like this. Destructuring, give me the minutes and give me the seconds. That equals my, oops. I'm going to adjust my console log for a second. Take out the console log. I'll say let time equals that. Means I don't need my closing bracket anymore. So I just changed my console log statement to be this. Let time equals that. Semicolon at the end. So that here, I could say minutes, seconds equals time, right? So what's happening here, keep in mind, let's imagine this. So right now we have, let's pretend this is an array of 12:57 or whatever, right? So we're saying this array, the 12 is going to go into the minutes, the 56 is going to go into the seconds. That's great, because now I can work with that mathematically. So now that I have minutes and seconds, let me shift enter there. I can now work with that. I can say, now because it's a string, I need to parse int it, which is probably something you learned back in 1073. So parse int will turn the string into an actual integer. So add those seconds with my minutes, but the minutes I have to multiply by 60 to get seconds. Okay. So I'm adding that. What do I need to assign that to? I need to assign that to total seconds equals, I just say plus equals there. That's the answer. So if I press enter now, you should see 36,150 seconds. On the exam, you will have this exact same question. On the exam, I'm going to ask you to fill in this one line of code. However, the only difference is I'm going to give you a different playlist. And this time, the playlist won't be so short. You'll have an hour involved as well as the minutes, as well as the seconds. So some of them are short, some of them are long. You have to destructure appropriately using a ternary operator. All right? Cool. Any questions on reduce? So everything you have, everything you need to know for the assignment, you now know. I've given it to you in the form of an in-class exercise or a lab. The only thing I haven't given you yet is the bonus stuff. If you want to try the bonus stuff for the assignment, here it is. You need to know how to do this key press detection. Really simple. So open up any web page, open up your console, and type this. Let's clear that out, Control L. So this is how to add a key press detection. You just say in your JavaScript code, window.add event listener. And this time you're listening for one of 3 things. Key up, we'll say key up for now. Then I'll just say event here, just to make it more obvious instead of E. And let's just console log our event. Enter. What we just did by pressing that enter, pressing that line and pressing enter is that this browser, this web page is now listening for you to press a key on the web page. So make sure your cursor, click anywhere on the page, click. Now type a key, A. Notice what just happened. It console logged the event. And if you look at the event, you'll see all kinds of information about A. For example, has code here, key A, has key A of here. Your key code is 65. Yeah, which is 65 here too. Cool. So if I type in B, oops, let's figure that out. Working B, yeah, C, D, E. Notice how it's capturing all that. Cool. Now, there was a difference. Let me clear that out. Notice how I use key up here. You could also use key down. But before I do, let me just show you something real quick. So I have my key up event. If I press the letter A, but don't let go, A, nothing happens. If I let go, then you see the event. That's what key up means. It's waiting for you to release the key. You could say, instead of key up, you could say key down, and it'll do the opposite. So it's waiting you to press the key. And the third value is key press. Now, what's different about this is the following. Actually, before I even press enter, let me just erase that for a second. So right now we're still working with the key up. So if I press A, there it is, B, C. Now watch what happens if I press the shift key. Shift. How about the control key? Control. So it's taking into account all of that. And not only that, if I say shift C, oops, sorry, not there, I want it on the web page, shift C. Notice what happened here. This key, this C, there's an attribute here that tells you was shift pressed? And the answer is true. Shift was pressed for this. Now the difference between key up, key down, key press and key down. So basically key press is this. If I do another add event listener with key press, enter. So you know what? Let me just refresh the page. Refresh the page. So we're dealing with a clean slate. Now I'm going to add a key press. Right? Wait, let me just test it. I'm going to click on A on the web page. A, nothing happens. Let's assign this add event listener. Enter. Click A. Something happens. Great. Now, because I use key press, what happens if I press Control? Shift, Control. There is no event. So the difference between key press is it only works with like A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, like those alphanumeric characters. It won't work with Shift and Control and those non-character keys. And that's pretty much all I wanted to show you. If you even, I don't know if you know about this Easter egg. So this website, BuzzFeed.com, I'm going to click on their page here. Click just to make sure I'm there. Watch what happens if I use the secret key combination. However, hands up, who knows about, in Super Nintendo or Nintendo days, who's ever played Contra? What was that secret combination to get the infinite lives? Yes, say that loud. Okay, but you started it off right. Yeah, so it's up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. So I'm gonna do that right now with my cursor keys. Here we go. Up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. They have that as an Easter egg. So if you put that as a key combo, it changes their web page to have some decorations in the back. So they're using event listeners for that. Okay. So that's the only reason why I mentioned that is because for the bonus marks for the assignment, I say bonus here. Here, add key press detectors so that you could do one of 4 things. So for example, you could press the delete key on your currently selected email, hit the delete key, boom, and it'll respond appropriately. Okay, so that means something like inside your add event listener, you're going to have a delete operation somewhere here to choose that bonus. And that is all for today. Oh yeah, and my last slide is there's this really neat information website that gives you information on what key you press. So if you go to this website called keycode.info, this website, if you press any key like A, B, C, it'll give you some of the information you'd probably want to know for your bonus. That is it. Assignment 1 is doable. Next week, I'll just teach a little bit to please Josh, and then it'll be a free time period to help each other out with our bugs. Okay, so that we can do well in our assignment. Okay? Okay. Any questions or comments so far? Okay, thanks for coming out.